You, finally awake.
The world of dreams has been explored in video games for many years with varying interpretations. From the flashback sequences in Final Fantasy VIII to the literal dream exploring in Psychonauts, dreams provide an opportunity for game developers to flex their creativity both narratively and visually, which makes it such a shame that if you were to look up the definition of superficial, you'd find this game. My name is Groudon, I'm reviewing Steam games in alphabetical order, and this is Un Voleur Verstand. I probably pronounced that wrong. Let's get into it. Un Voleur Verstand translates to, rather aptly, a lost mind, which reflects how I felt at many stages in this game, wandering through its surreal landscapes, getting lost in winding hallways, overgrown fields, and dark basements. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a first-person platformer with light puzzle elements. Narratively speaking, there is no plot to be found, but there are recurring themes present, so as the player, you are left to pick up on these clues and piece together a story for yourself. If there is an underlying plot here, I suspect I'm a little too dense to figure it out. If you were hoping for some slowly unveiled plot or a big reveal at the end, well, prepare to be disappointed because that's not happening. The first of the game's themes appears as soon as you start the game, this massive dead tree that stands alone on a dusty plateau. In a nice touch, the opening menu scene is also the very start of the game, dropping the player in as soon as the game has started. This tree is a central focus throughout the 18 levels, requiring you to navigate through various obstacles to reach it. Approaching and then waiting by the tree will trigger an event that transports you to the next level. I'm not going to go into the details of each and every level because they can be split into 3 different level categories. Firstly, there are maze-type levels, which includes the very first level, not counting the opening sequence. Set in an abandoned mansion, these levels twist and turn through tight corridors and usually have a small puzzle to solve that involves finding and turning off small lamps that are scattered throughout. The first of these levels had a slight graphical bug, where when you're looking at some walls or doors from certain angles, it would cause them to completely vanish. This made some puzzles, like this room with rotating walls, incredibly difficult. For example, I can clearly see through this doorway, but I can't pass because there is actually a wall there that just hasn't loaded correctly. Now, to keep you on your toes, there are also several trapdoors. Falling down any one of these will simply send you back to the last checkpoint. There are no jump scares or gory deaths to be found here. My favourite of the maze-type levels was this one, set in a large, overgrown field at night. There's admittedly very little direction provided other than the occasional fire to mark your progress, but it reminds me of a giant corn maze, only you're actually allowed off the path if you wish. It feels like something right out of a child's dream, where you're shrunk in size just enough that the proportions of everything feels off, making the landscape and the structures feel surreal and mystical. Now, my least favourite of the maze levels was this one, set in the basement of the mansion. You're in the dark, barely able to see in front of you, with only the next archway lit up as guidance of where to go next, and bottomless pits and trapdoors are scattered everywhere. There are several moments where you are presented with a few archways which you can pass through to either extinguish or ignite the flame. You need the correct combination in order to proceed, which is fine with 3 doors, but it's a test of patience with 5. It's just trial and error with that many options, and that's not enjoyable. These levels can feel a bit cramped due to the closeness of the walls and the ceilings, but the tight spacing wasn't the biggest issue. It was actually the 8th stage, the second of the mansion levels, that had so many broken textures that I literally fell through the floor at one point. With how frequently objects were flickering in and out of existence, it really did make me feel like I was in a haunted house, but it definitely wasn't intentional and it completely pulled me out of the experience. Walking through an endless series of corridors and hallways, having to check every possible path because you never know what is actually a wall and what is a misplaced texture, is pretty darn low on the list of enjoyable things to do in video games. Right, hold up a second, there's something I need to say. So, 1 week ago I was at less than 100 subscribers. The last video got way more attention than I was ever expecting or hoping for, so I want to take a moment to thank everyone that watched my last video or has subscribed recently to the channel. You're all amazing and wonderful people, honestly. Thank you. I've been reading and trying to reply to every comment, and the positivity you've all shared is just, it's unreal. As someone who is entirely self-taught and just does this as a hobby, I can't overstate how much your support means to me. Hopefully you're having fun following along my bizarre gaming journey. The fact that you willingly give your time to be a part of this is an honor to me. So again, thank you. Now let's get back to the content. So, the second level type is your more traditional platformer. There are, broadly speaking, 3 different environments that these take place in. The first is a cold, wintry realm filled with archways, gates of fire, and floating platforms, along with the occasional guillotine to dodge. These levels with their rickety wooden bridges gave me flashbacks to certain levels in the first Crash Bandicoot game, and thankfully these levels aren't quite as difficult. The second platforming environment is an open expanse like a canyon or desert, the sky filled with floating rocks. The third is a sprawling city block filled with skyscrapers placed upon a sea of reflective ice. It has to be said that some of the environments that have been created are simply stunning. Let's take a moment just to appreciate what they've crafted here. The light rays and atmospheric effects combined with the surreal architecture makes for some wonderful screenshot-worthy moments. So it's a shame that the platforming mechanics just aren't great. Honestly, there's a reason that most platformers are third person. In a first-person view, it's difficult to judge exactly where your feet are placed, leading to many jumps relying on thoughts and prayers to land successfully. This is hindered further by the fact that the physics for jumping is different in each level. Jumps that are impossible in one type of level are child's play in others. That said, I didn't run into many issues with the platforming style levels, with 2 exceptions. The first was this gorgeous level at sunset in a rocky wasteland. This is one of very few levels where you can actually jump down to the ground and walk around. In fact, this is required in order to find some of the game's optional hidden collectible flowers. The problem is that the platform that is meant to lift you back up to the start simply vanished. Thankfully, there was actually a shortcut that allows you to bypass all of this. Just take the path to the left at the start and jump your way over these boulders. The second platforming issue I encountered was in the second city level. After activating a series of payphones, one side of the map suddenly does an inception and flips 90 degrees, the buildings now projecting horizontally into the landscape. Now, there's no denying that this is visually impressive and a creative use of the space to make some novel platforming set pieces. I know you're waiting for the but. And my goodness is there a big but. A problem so big that it meant that this one level took over 2 hours to complete, whereas a standard level is 15 to 20 minutes. Take a look at this. That payphone over there is ringing and we need to reach it, but you may notice that it's hovering in midair. The platforms are invisible. They're not meant to be, but they are. Those buildings in the distance were meant to rotate along with the others, but for whatever reason, they glitched. But the platforming hitbox is still in the correct position, so you can stand on it and bump into it, just not see it. As you can likely imagine, this made the next few platforming segments slightly more difficult than originally intended. Through sheer willpower, the loss of several brain cells and years off my life, and a random YouTube video that showed a non-glitched version of this level, shout out to DannyDubs86, thank you, I was able to navigate my way through this glitched mess and reach the end. It turns out that this is a known issue with the Steam version of the game, with posts several years old describing the same problem, so it's unlikely to get fixed anytime soon. However, the Xbox One, PS4 and Switch versions appear to be fine. Moving on to the final category of levels,
Nightmares.
it is the dream realm after all, and not all dreams are pleasant. It appears that our character has a recurring nightmare involving a long, narrow bridge that extends seemingly forever over the water and into the mist. You start next to an overturned vehicle, and as you move away, other vehicles start to drive towards you, and eventually from behind you as well, and you need to avoid being run over. The final segment of these nightmares requires you to sprint away from a truck that is slowly gaining on you from behind, reminding me of Deadpool in the ice rink. This particular nightmare occurs 3 times, but there is a 4th nightmare which is a little bit deceptive, because I think the opening scene in this level is one of my favourites. The colours and the lighting are very artistic, and again, I think it needs to be said that the devs have nailed the visual design. As I said before though, this level is deceptive. As you begin to walk towards the tree, massive stone totems begin to fall from the sky like meteors. These are haphazard and random, requiring you to keep an eye on the sky at all times to avoid being crushed underneath. Those 3 level types make up the 18 different levels that are available to explore, so there is a decent chunk of content here. However, we've now seen everything that the game has to offer, and at a price of $16.99, is that enough? Nvalorvestand is the type of game that annoys me because it was so close to being good. Had they taken the time to tidy up and fix the graphical bugs and add in some backstory or plot, it might have been a completely different result. It could have been as simple as removing the collectible flowers and replacing them with audio logs that play recorded sections of discussions with their psychologist who is helping them through a past trauma. Or, given the recurring nightmare which implies that the main character may be dead, the audio logs could instead be final farewells from the main character's loved ones, discussing the events that lead up to the main character's demise, providing some closure for them from beyond the grave. That would have transformed this game from a subpar, overpriced, boring, repetitive, glitched mess of a first-person platformer that happens to look nice at times, into a compelling, narrative-driven and emotional journey that uses the gorgeous landscapes to represent a person processing the reality of their own death and lack of closure. This game was so close to just being on the right side of the fence to be recommended, until the glitches reared their ugly heads. If you're curious and want to try it, I recommend picking it up on sale on a console, just not on Steam. And for that reason, my final rating for Nvalorvestand is a car crash out of 10. It was going just fine until it wasn't. Thank you for watching. As always, if you're enjoying these videos, why not help out by liking the video? And while you're there, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of this weird gaming journey that I'm on. And if you've already done both, then hey, thank you, I really appreciate you. And as always, until next time, take care.